Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Sanju Maharzan, and I'm involved in ASHRI as Emerging Fellows Committee member. Christian, are you sharing the slide?
Not
You are?
yet.
Okay.
Not yet. 1 second. Mm, Share. All right.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Next
Mhm.
slide, please. Okay. Thank you. Before we begin, are you ready to begin? Maggie,
Yeah.
Christian?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to briefly introduce ASHRI, the Academic Advisory Council for Science Research and Education. ASHRI, in short, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing thought leadership in on-premise signage. Our mission is to foster and disseminate interdisciplinary research in signage and wayfinding by driving innovation across academia and related fields. Our vision is to spark collaboration that shapes the future of signage and wayfinding in the built environment. Can you share the next slide, please? Since 2017, the ASHRI Emerging Fellowship have supported early career scholars in the field of on. To date, over 25 fellows have been named, receiving more than 160,000 in awards. This multidisciplinary group explores a wide range of topics, from information processing and emotional response to signage to its impact on sustainability and consumer well-being. Here is the list of 2025-2026 ASHRI Emerging Fellows, including both returning and new members. So our speaker today is Christian Arroyo. He is currently mentored by Dr. Steve Kopp. Please join me in welcoming our emerging fellow, Christian Arroyo, who will now take the floor.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm very excited to be here. Also, thank you everyone for joining us today. So today I'll be presenting this project that is about the effects of belongingness signage on consumers' choices. As Sanji was saying, my mentor is Dr. Steve Kopp, and this is a project I'm working on with my Deep Biswas from USF and Courtney Socks from Penn State University. So, kind of like to start with the presentation, I wanted to show this picture. I'm pretty sure that you have seen welcome signage all the time when you visit stores, but this doesn't really mean that everyone is welcome. So that's what I'm about to discuss in the paper in the presentation. And uh, just to like contextualize what I'm about to discuss, you know that there are different types of signage. There is on-premise signage and there is in-store signage. And my presentation will be focused on in-store signage. Yeah, on-premise is kind of like what you see outside of the store, like that lets you to understand which store is it. And then in-store signage kind of like guides the rules of the place, the things that the place wants to communicate, and also helps people to find their ways and to like navigate throughout the space. So, of course, like the key concept in my presentation is gonna be the idea of belongingness. And belongingness is highly related with this need that we actually have from evolution to feel that we are accepted and connected in a social environment. We just want to be part of a group. It's a fundamental human need that can determine well-being and also functioning from both physiological and psychological aspects. So for humans, it's really, really important to feel that they belong to a social context. And then, because we understand how important it is to make people feel that they are welcome, there has been an increase in research and like research calling for things that are designed for everyone, making sure that everyone is included and welcome in the way in which we design products, but also stores and communications. So this idea of designing things for everyone basically appeals to the fact that we need to recognize that people have different needs and capabilities. Like there's a wide diverse population everywhere, and then what we want is to reduce the mismatch that exists between users and the design object, being the store, the communication, the product, and so on. So basically, designing for everyone is making things more accessible, universal, inclusive, and welcome. But it's basically the fact that you want to keep people at the heart of the process. You want to understand that people are different, and you want to have different offerings that kind of like acknowledge that people are different as well. Of course, designing for everyone can also influence purchase intentions, willingness to pay, and willingness to recommend, in the sense that we tend to trigger this sense of belongingness among other people. And then uh, we can represent this idea of designing for everyone in different parts when it comes to the marketplace. So, for example, these are some strategies that some companies are using in terms of designing stuff for everyone. So you see, for example, in Sephora, they have those different baskets depending on whether do you want to be approached or not. Then Leotain has those packages that have braille so that people with vision limitations can also understand what's in the product. And then you see that the Starbucks have designed several stores with uh, counters that are very low in height so that people with those special needs can also like approach to the service persons. But we can actually have a lot of cues that signal this idea of triggering belongingness in the retail store. Uh, yeah, so several aspects on the retail stores can trigger the sense of community. It can go from things like the design of the store, such as like whether you use certain materials or not. But actually, the signage is very powerful when it comes to telling people if they belong to a place or not. You know that signage, especially in service context, can signal the rules of the place and also the people that are welcome in the place. That's what I was saying. That when you see a welcome sign, it's like not literally like for everyone. So let's take a look at how signage can communicate this idea of belongingness, and it's kind of like related to some strategies that some brands are using right now. For example, this is IKEA, and you see that they are communicating that they have all gender toilets. This is a restaurant that I visited very recently in Fayetteville that also kind of like tell consumers that everyone belongs to a place, that everyone can make use of something. St. Boris in the UK, they have different signage that tell people that they have a special program for people that have hidden disabilities, so that they can wear uh, like a particular band if they need help. And then Wegmans have a special heating loops, and they communicate this in signage for people that also like have a hard time experiencing the different auditory stuff in the store. And this is actually something that is very trending right now. The idea of having sensory-friendly spaces. And you see that everything is being communicated via signage. For example, this is Walmart, and they are telling people that they have sensory-friendly hours where they have less light, less noise, no music, so that people feel more comfortable, especially people with special needs. Uh, Look cinemas, and also I see that different movie change. They have sensory friendly movies. So this is Moana 2 per se, and Chuck E. Cheese also have sensory friendly alternatives that they communicate via signage in the stores. Reebok, you see here in like a literal digital signage example, how they are telling people that the place is welcoming everyone. And Broadway hotels, you see that they are literally saying that they welcome all races, all religions, all country of origins, genders, sexual orientations, and so on. So, of course, this idea of designing for everyone is like keeping in mind that you want to have subtle environmental cues that tell people that they can be welcome in a place, and like particularly what we are discussing here is signage cues that tell people that, and then it's kind of like providing alternatives to people that are relevant to their particular goals and that help them to understand how they can relate to a brand, a product, an offering, and so on. And of course, like this idea of designing for everyone tends to trigger positive emotions, so happiness, pride, awe, elevation, joy, and so on. There are already some papers that explore what happens when you communicate belongingness cues to customers. For example, how people react to brands that have gender neutral marketing, so gender neutral restrooms or products, whether you have foreign language signs, whether you have diverse product offerings or visual representations of diversity in your communications. And then, of course, if you represent people with disabilities as well. But most of the focus has been on how people perceive the brands and like whether you feel that this is a good brand or not, and you feel connected and identified with the brand. But what we want to explore in this project, and this is kind of like what I'm about to show you, is whether they're exposed to this type of signage that communicates belongingness, the idea that everyone is like can go to a place, influences consumers' choices. And particularly the type of choices that we are exploring are hedonic and utilitarian. I'm gonna go to that in a minute, but basically what we have seen in research related to this idea of feeling that you belong to a place is that people tend to compensate their behaviors based on whether they feel included or excluded in a context. And overall, it has been shown that when you feel included, you tend to rely more on cognition. You tend to care more about things that actually matter. You tend to be less aggressive. You tend to pay less attention to smiling faces. On the other side, if you will feel excluded, you will be making more unhealthy choices, less donations, and so on. So you see that the idea of feeling that you belong to a place can influence your choices. And as I was telling you, the focus here will be on hedonic versus utilitarian choices. So this idea of hedonic versus utilitarian, especially for the people that are not on marketing, is going back to research on motivations that says that basically we have two reasons to consume. On one side, we have utilitarian reasons to consume, which is the idea that we want to go for products that emphasize functionality, that are helpful, and that are practical. So basically, what this says is that you want products that are useful, that get the thing done. And on the other side, we can also go for hedonic products, which will be products that emphasize more fun, emotions, sensory aspects, things that you tend to enjoy. So these are some illustrations of hedonic versus utilitarian products. So you see, like you can get a watch that gives you the hour, but you can get a fancy one that communicates other stuff. So this will be like utilitarian, hedonic. You can get a laundry soap that gets the thin watch, which is utilitarian, and then you can get one that makes a lot of emphasis on the softness and the smell of it. So that will be hedonic. Anyway, so going back to what I was saying, if we feel that we belong to a place, we rely more on cognition, we tend to be more rational. So, and also when we get exposed to these cues that signal belongingness, we also tend to reduce the identity vigilance, and we tend to go for behaviors that are more acceptable in a social context, more normative, more responsible. So what we are saying here is that being exposed to signage that signals belongingness versus regular signage increases utilitarian choices compared to hedonic choices. So I'm going to present you three studies that show evidence of this phenomenon. First of all, this is a field study that had two conditions, belongingness versus control. I'm going to show you the conditions in a minute, but basically this was a field study that we conducted in a restaurant, and we were able to approach 115 dinners. So this is how the restaurant works. They have an area that is very loud. It plays a lot of music. It's very arousing, but they also have an area where people can go and talk. It's very calm, subtle, not overly stimulating. So what we did was basically that we asked people that work in the restaurant to wear two different t-shirts. During some hours, they were wearing t-shirts that say welcome, and during other hours, they were wearing t-shirts that say welcome to our sensory-friendly area. So of course, we conducted this study in the area where people can actually talk and is less arousing. And then, so those servers were walking through the area. They were approaching people and telling them like, "Welcome to the restaurant" or "Welcome to our sensory-friendly area." And then they told them that they were giving free samples of food. So they offered either natural almonds or candy-coated almonds. So you see that one is very clearly utilitarian and one is more hedonic, one is more sweet and pleasurable. Anyway, and what we were able to see in this study is that the choices of the natural almonds increased for the people that saw the t-shirt that said, "Welcome to our sensory-friendly area." So that kind of like it's very cool because it gives us an understanding of the phenomenon in the field, which is consequential as well because people were getting the actual choice that they make. But we also tested this phenomenon in the lab, kind of like to trying to replicate the effects. So again, we have belongingness cues versus control cues. And this is how the signage looks like. So control, welcome, belongingness, we welcome all races, all religions, all countries, anyway. And then people were asked, which type of book would you choose from this store if you were buying it? And then they got to choose between a book that is to read to learn something versus a book that they will read for pleasure. And you see here in the data that also people selected more the book to learn something where they were exposed to the welcoming sign, kind of like providing more evidence of what we were proposing, but with a different stimuli, a different type of message that also communicates this idea of belonging. Finally, something that I also wanted to present is that we also tested moderating effects of individual differences. So we were thinking that not everyone is going to react the same way to this type of signage that they get exposed to in store. So one of the individual differences that we explored is open-mindedness, the idea that there are some people that they want to consider other things, they want to revise their beliefs, and so on. And people with open-mindedness tend to pay less attention to situational cues. So let's say that people that are very open-minded, uh, they will rely on a cognitive and thinking process, and they will care less about the stuff that is in the environment. And then people with low open-mindedness tend to rely more on the actual situation and context. So basically, what we are expecting is that the effects that we are proposing will hold for people with low or moderate levels of open-mindedness. This is kind of like the second hypothesis that we have. So this is a study that we conducted on Prolific, and basically it was again belongingness versus control cues, and we also measure open-mindedness as an individual difference. So this is what people got exposed to. Either they saw that the store, that a particular gift shop had shopping hours, or that they have sensory friendly shopping hours. And they got explained what is sensory friendly. And then we ask people which product they will select from this store. So either they choose between a coffee cup holder that just serves a purpose or a chic stainless steel travel mug, which is supposed to be cute, aesthetic, and so on. And I want to highlight that we pre-tested all the choices and all the different studies. So we know that they are different in hedonic versus utilitarian aspects. Overall, so these are the items where we he used it to test open-mindedness. So the idea, for example, whether people are open to consider other viewpoints, whether they consider as many different options as possible, and so on. And this is what we saw. Again, having a sense that like the sensory-friendly signage increases the proportion of people who selects the utilitarian choice, in this case, the cup holder. But interesting is that we were able to show in this floodlight analysis that these effects hold for people that have levels of open-mindedness below 5.9. So basically, after this point, signage won't influence people's behavior. like for people that are way too open-minded, they won't be relying on like those type of cues to make their final choice. This will affect people that you can actually influence when it comes to giving belongingness cues. So overall, what we were proposing in this study is that belongingness signage can shift people choices towards more utilitarian options, and that there are some individual differences at play. Of course, we have studies that test for multiple sets of choices, multiple ways in which a company can communicate that they are increasing the sense of belongingness for consumers, and also we have tested processes in terms of the normative expectations that people have in stores. So basically, like the idea that since you see that this is a place that this is a place that's being inclusive, you expect that you expect to behave more rational and more functional in that place. All right, so that's me, and so Christian, I'm a PhD candidate at USF, and then my mentor is Dr. Steve Cobb. So that being said, like, do you have
Thank
questions?
you. Thank you. Thank you, Christian, for your insightful on such an interesting topic. We will now open the floor to any questions or comments you may have. Please feel free to ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling to work my computer right now. Um, Christian, this is really interesting. I can you go back a couple of slides to
To work.
a couple go back about 2 or 3 slides. Yeah, so the one with the next slide then. Yeah, this is really interesting. And do you think, I think in your final slide, you mentioned something about individual differences.
Mhm.
Is there something related? How can you operationalize? Well, let me put it a different way. How can you, yeah, operationalize this idea of open-mindedness?
Mhm. You mean like for the questions, or like how can you
Uh,
do this in the practice?
yeah, in practice, I understand the scales.
Yeah. Yes. So I guess that is kind of like the brand understanding where they customers.
Right,
So perhaps in terms of positioning, if they know that this is a brand that gets purchased only by people that are really highly open-minded, like
right,
that they won't be expecting these type of effects. But if they have more variance in the type of customers that they might get some benefits from having these, especially if they want to run, I don't know, sales promotions on utilitarian stuff, or
right,
want to increase the demand or something like that.
right. And I think my other question is related to something that Dawn just included in the chat.
Okay, let me. Oh, I don't see the chat. Wait.
I think it says we spend a lot of time using signs to make people unwelcome. What can we learn from the data on the no and don't signs to inform your work?
Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah, I'm just
Dawn?
reading Dawn's
Okay.
Yeah,
question. Or if Dawn wants to jump in or
Okay. Yes, because I cannot see
I
my
think,
chat. I don't know what
yeah,
it is.
I think
Hi.
and this is parallel with a question that I had too. Um, what about things that are unwelcoming? Can you kind of test
Okay.
the other end of
Yes.
this continuum?
Yeah, so actually, so this paper has been highly motivated by more or less substantive phenomenon. So like understanding how we respond to this, given that is something that is happening in the marketplace. So that's kind of like one of the future areas that we want to explore within the same project. So let's say that it's not a complete project, it's something that we want to explore as well. But yeah, like it will be interesting to see if those unwelcoming signs also change people behavior. So like perhaps if we go for that idea that we were thinking about, like compensatory stuff, and going back to that research that says that if you feel that you don't belong, you will kind of like be less cognitive or less rational. We will expect the opposite. Perhaps if you feel very unwelcome in a place, you will try to compensate that with hedonic choices. So that will be an interesting way to flip the effects.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yes. Any more questions?
I have a question. Christian, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Christian, it's Matt. Really nice work. I was especially impressed by the field experiments because I know that's really difficult to kind of execute. So really nice. I guess I'm wondering if you expect your effect to be particularly strong for individuals who themselves have invisible disabilities, or who may be particularly likely to notice this kind of messaging on signs because it is personally relevant to them, and if that's something you have tested or are thinking about testing.
Yes, actually, that's something that we tested. We tested for whether people have a disability and whether people feel that they are part of a minority group as well for the particular different study. And we were actually able to see that effects are way stronger for those consumers. So yeah, that kind of like speaks about the idea of the phenomenon is usually related to this idea of feeling welcome and that you belong to a place and you really want cues that explain that.
That's great. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you.
One other question I noticed, so the t-shirt field experiment, the signage was in Spanish.
Yes.
And do you think that there may be, I don't know, different cultural responses to that kind of information?
Well, that's actually very interesting because if we think about, for example, the idea of open-mindedness, that changes as well culturally. So yes, when it comes to the field study, we actually conducted that in a Spanish-speaking country. But then the other studies, like the lab studies, the experiments, and so on, were conducted in the US. So kind of like we were able to see that those effects, it's like taking its seats in other cultures. I guess that it depends a lot of like the specific culture you're exploring to, but at least we were able to see that in South America.
That's really cool.
Okay. Are there any further questions for Christian? Okay, so since there are no further questions, I want to sincerely thank everyone for their active engagement and participation. Before we close, I would like to share some details about our upcoming webinar scheduled for November 18 at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, featuring Aiden Lee as our speaker. For more information, please scan the QR code displayed on the screen. With that, we will now conclude today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us.